Yes. All right. Clapping time. Three, two, one. Hello and welcome to Key Radio Live. This is the final episode of the One Book Club. As bittersweet of that is for me to say, but it's been a fun ride, and I'm so happy that we finally made it here. So, once again, I'm joined with Lucy.
You can call it 1, 2, 3.
It, it,
I made that joke last week. It's not funny anymore. I'll stop.
We definitely did a bit of a countdown. That's kind of funny. And once again, joining us after the second episode, we have Scout again.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, welcome back. This is gonna be great. So
I'm so glad to be back.
We are happy to have you. It's like, last episode was just an absolute blast because last episode we talked about the Maeda routes and just all of the perspectives, and having Scout to add on to everything. We're so grateful that you were there.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah, the last episode was a ton of fun, and I'm glad that, as probably the biggest Nanase defender of the key keepers, I could give that perspective.
Yeah, you added so much to Nanase, dude. It's like, I'm actually so glad we got you for that one. But hey, we are back once again, and this time we're gonna be finishing off the One Book Club with the last two routes, the Shun / Hikami route, the Akane route, and just our overall thoughts. So last episode was a bit of a, like, we talked about the more controversial aspects of one. Here is like the more universally agreed one. Hello, we're talking about the Akane route. Prepare for a lot of gushing.
So one of y'all made a joke on the pre-show, like the so-called free thinkers. Like,
yeah, this is gonna be time. So we want to talk about Shun route first, because this is like where all the where we get most of the answers, quote unquote, we get throughout the entire game as a whole. So yeah, let's just get started. So just for context,
before we start,
yeah,
there's gonna be a lot of Eternal World discussion going on, and I've got like a few topics especially that I really want to bring up, but as like a mental warm up, because I'm trying to gather a lot of thoughts right now. Can I bring up two hopefully short topics for you two?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so firstly, since we spent last episode saying a lot of bad things about him, what is the route that you two personally enjoy Kohei in the most?
Enjoying Kohei, probably the one we're about to talk about.
Akane, definitely. Like, this is just a no-brainer for me. It's definitely Akane.
Well, for me personally, I actually enjoy him in Mio's route the most.
I respect this take.
I also enjoy him in Mio route. It's pretty sweet.
I think when he's good, it's usually pretty close, but what really pushes him to the front for me in Mio's route to me is just how much he changes just from the club subplot going on. Like,
oh yeah,
like it makes me wonder if he would have gotten on the road to picking himself up quicker if the one club he joined hadn't been a complete disaster, just out of his hands.
Because there are some things we're going to talk about today that lead me to believe that might be the case.
Because
like,
just with how much he genuinely changes just on the power of it and how invested he gets in it, not just for Mio's sake, but for his own sake. It's a great subplot. It's
I want to come back to this question when we get deep into the Shun talk, because like I think you are absolutely on the right track here.
All right. And I guess for my second topic, this is a more general one, but are there any scenes from the past routes we've discussed that either of you want to give a quick shout out if you weren't able to before?
I don't really think of any at the top of my head. Because, like, I think generally we've discussed everything really well. Like, pretty much all I've had to say, I've already said about the previous routes. I do think as we've mentioned, the like Mio's route is like probably one of the more healthier romances in one, if not the healthiest. And like as you said, like at her with the music club, or not the music club, her with the drama club. Putting Kohei with the drama club, because we have more people for Kohei to grow with. It's like we have so much more to see him and connect with, and we'll definitely get to that deeper soon. But yeah, it's just I feel like I have talked everything I want to say in previous routes. So if you listening haven't gone back to them for some reason, you should do that because we go in quite deep.
Yeah. This episode, like, we should do I'll do my little disclaimer thing here. This episode will contain spoilers for the entire game. If you have not finished the entire game, turn back now, play the game, it's really good. Second thing, like, when we get into the Eternal World stuff, I have to give a little bit of a listener discretion warning here. We are going to talk about suicide, so if that topic is potentially triggering or upsetting, just be warned, we will be covering it. I like to think that the three of us are going to do it tastefully, but it is still a topic that we will be talking about today. So that's my disclaimer.
You don't have any particular scenes you want to shout out?
Not particularly. I think I covered what I really wanted to talk about in the previous episodes.
All right. Well, in that case, I've got two brief things about Misaki's route I need to shout out because
let's do it. Since you were not on that episode,
you were
so
not. So yeah,
I wouldn't have joined because I needed to study what these book club podcasts were like anyway. But now that I'm here, I really need to give a little piece on them. So Misaki is my favorite key girl right now. She is an absolute joy, and anything I could say about her route, you two already did, I think. But as far as optional scenes that I don't think most people would run into on their own, aside from the Nanase uniform auction we mentioned last episode, there is one from Misaki's route I really need to point out. It's the morning where Kohei wakes up at school, having slept there overnight, and he sees Misaki just crossing the hall near him. If you choose to ignore her and go back to sleep, she will notice Kohei in the classroom and decide to wake him up in her own way. And it's a really small scene.
I don't know if I got this scene.
It's counterintuitive, so I don't think most people would, but the only heroines who don't get to wake Kohei up are Mio and Mayu, and out of all of them, I think Misaki actually does it the best.
I will have to go back and get this when we're done.
You should. She banters with him like in the way most does, and she shoots down everything he says. And when he still doesn't get up,
cute.
When he still doesn't wake up, she starts pulling on his cheeks and messing with him just to force him up. It's a really cute and funny little scene that's just peak Misaki, and anyone who's interested, I definitely recommend going back to see that.
Fair enough.
Amazing, yeah.
And the second thing...
Nari in chat is like, I'm gonna go do that right now.
Absolutely fair. And the second thing is, it's not so much a scene, but it's just something I really need to say about the route because it's a big reason why it's one of my favorites right now. I imagine the term key magic gets thrown around a lot on these podcasts.
It is the topic of our 4th season, which is we're taking a break from for this book club, but we'll return soon.
Yeah, that's where I first heard it, and I haven't caught all but one of those. I haven't really caught any of those episodes before, so I don't know if it's like this, but I imagine it's one of those things where everyone kind of has their own definition of it.
Yes, I would agree with
entry,
that.
I feel
That too.
For me, I figured this out like as soon as I even heard the term. For me, key magic is a very special atmosphere that's both very specific and also shows up in a lot of different forms. And it is the key, forgive the fun, the key element of a lot of my favorite key routes, because it's something I haven't felt from any other like developer. And to give some examples of where I see it, it's Shiori's route in canon, a large part of air in general, but most especially Minagi's routes and the air route, and the special projection in Planetarian.
Yeah.
And that last one especially, you two can probably understand what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Scout followed my recent read through of Planetarian and all of its side content, and it was actually a really fun time.
Yeah, I had finished it like just a week or so before that, I think.
Oh wow, I didn't realize it was that recent. So
yeah, I was still pretty fresh off it, but
yeah.
For me, the earliest example of that key magic I've found is in Misaki's route, and most especially in two particular scenes, the Christmas party that goes between them, and the whole sequence of them going through the school at night after her graduation. Those scenes are just filled with that special kind of atmosphere that just speaks to me in a way I can't describe, but always manage to catch when it's there.
Yeah, that's one thing like we didn't really deeply touch on in this book club, but Utori and I actually talked a lot about it on our One versus Canon episode of Battle of the Works, is that we talked very deeply about the atmosphere of those two works and how it was kind of never replicated this way again. Like, we're focusing a lot on the remake for this book club, but it's especially true in the original one, is that there's nothing quite like playing a visual novel from the 90s. It's just, there's nothing quite like it. Like, I recently had a similar experience when I was reading Never 7 of all things. Which technically isn't even from the 90s, it's from 2000, but it's just got this extra vibe to it that's just really wonderful. So if you've read the remake first, which is a lot of people listening to this book club, and you're interested in the original, go and read a route or two. Like, go and reread like your favorite route or two, just to see like what the differences are in the vibes. I still think the original one holds up pretty well. It's the weaker of the two, obviously, but it still holds up. Manpig, do you agree?
I do think the visual novel, like the original visual novel, really does hold up, and it's worth taking a look at. It has like a very unique vibe, and even though the remake captures it super well, if you're curious about how the original felt and sounds, definitely go back and take a read. Like, a lot of these original like experiences are one of a kind, and even like the CGs, they are dated, but still charming to take a look at them.
Oh yeah, I love
like,
the original one CGs.
It's dated, but it's still amazing. It's aged as well as it has.
Yeah, like it's like 25. It's over 25 years. It's about like,
at the time of recording, it is 25 and a half years old.
Oh,
damn.
It is old. I think it's older than both of you. Like,
yeah,
that's crazy to think about.
Not me, but
that's
like,
crazy
but it's okay.
to think about.
Yeah,
all right.
I was
like the biggest strengths.
I was in preschool when it came out. Like,
the biggest strengths we see even in the remake were always there in the original too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just, that atmosphere is just one of a kind. All right.
That's the topics I had that helped me organize things a bit, so I'm ready.
Fair enough.
Cool.
Well, we're happy to talk. All right. Let's talk about the routes we're talking about tonight, which is Shun route and Akane route. aka the big ones that basically signal the end and have all the answers that we might have questioned earlier in the story.
Yep. All right. So Shun route is pretty short. It's really just like a collection of 4 scenes. Now, there are a couple things like I want to get into with this route, but the first one I really want to talk about is like the context for it in like a speculative sense, because we don't actually know who wrote this route. My theory, and I would give it probably a 70% chance I'm right here. I think this is a Hisaya route. And I think that for one really big reason, which is the sunset symbolism, which is really shown in the frickin' CG of Shun we got in the remake, because in the original he didn't have any CGs. Hisaya loves his sunset symbolism. We talked about this on one of the previous episodes. I cannot remember which one.
That was last time.
It was last time because you were there.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
I
we were
remember
talking about the Misaki, the symbolism of it in Misaki's route, actually.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, it's even bigger here because Shun is another character you meet for the first time at sunset. And, like, that's just a huge, huge thing that Hisaya does to show that, hey, something is ending here. This is a character whose, like, idea, like, everything about them is very focused on how is this gonna end.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way also because, like, Shun's route is, like, meant to be read as one of the last routes, or at least one that closes one or helps close one.
Worth noting, it is a locked route. You have to complete at least one other route and have seen the Eternal World once to even get on this route.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It is essential. So people who are wondering why is there a guy suddenly appearing, it's because this is the answers route. It's not very long, and it's not really in itself a huge focus of the game, but it is a very essential route that gives a lot more to add on to the story, and that helps you think and formulate what exactly happens in this story. Because as we'll soon talk about, even though this tries to give us a lot of answers, a lot of it is still kept vague, because that's just how one was designed. Maeda wanted to keep things more like, he wanted to keep things up to interpretation, as far as I remember hearing somewhere.
Yeah, that was in one of the interviews that we saw. I think it was the joint interview with him and Hinoue.
Yeah.
That recently happened, where they kind of talked about their history of working together.
All right, so do we want to talk about what exactly happens in the Shun route? Lucy, do you want to head this, since you probably have the most to talk about this? Because I remember you had the whole review. I mainly talked about how it was like a build up and the things that contributed, but you had a lot to say, so I kind of want to just hear that.
And I'll admit, out of all the routes, this is the one I'm the most iffy on whether or not I even understand it. So I think this is definitely Lucci's time.
Okay, yeah, I'll take this one because I made a very bold claim on the first episode of One Book Club that surprised Manpig a little bit. This is my second favorite route in the game.
Yeah.
And like I definitely want to get into this, and I want to talk a little bit about not how it's presented in the remake, but my original read of it, because I do think it's important to talk about here. This route was the one route that made a guideless playthrough of one completely impossible for me. This is brutally difficult because the only thing you get 3 scenes with Shun that are fairly easy to get in the first few days of Common Route, where you go to the club room and he's there and you play your instrument together for a little bit. Shun makes some kind of sussy comments at Kohei, and Kohei's like, what the fuck is this dude? And at the last one, you realize that he seems kind of sad, and just Kohei's wondering, he is why is he like this? why do I relate to this? And Shun straight up says, you have the same eyes as me in there. And at that point, he says, let's meet on a special day if you can find me. And I couldn't. I tried so hard and I could not figure out what he meant, how to get it to the point where I'm just like, I need to use a guide for this. And in the original, I kind of like thought it was done where you have to kind of play hot and cold with both Nanase and Nagamori. Having seen the hint system, you really just need to follow Nanase route and then break off on one particular day.
Yes,
and the reason
you need to get right before you would especially lock into Nanase's route, past the whole bullying subplot that happens. And then right when it would go straight into her route, that's when you have the last Shun decision.
The last option, right. But like, you need to pass the test and everything, because Nanase route is the only route where Kohei is at the school that late on Christmas Eve.
Yes, and I think it's also a bit more significant than that when we get to the ending, but that'll come when it comes.
Yes. But like that's why that route. That's one question I hear a lot. Why Nanase? It's not anything specific for Nanase. It's like the message of this route to me is that you can save someone by being in the right place at the right time. I won't name the story, but this is a true story I read once in for one of my classes at a time, where there was a man who was walking through the streets of San Francisco, and he left a suicide note that said, I'm going to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. If one person smiles at me on my way there, I won't jump. And no one did it, and that man died. Sometimes being in the right place at the right time can save someone. And as we see, Shun is able to come back from the Eternal World. And I think it's because even just those little moments, those small moments of playing music together in the club room, screwing around, even if they didn't form a deep connection about what's going on, those little moments can mean a lot to someone. And it's kind of there to say, you don't know how much the little kindnesses you perform for someone mean to that person, because that person could be struggling and you don't even know. And that's just why this little story is just one of those like miniature key routes that just hit me like a ton of bricks, because that's what it reminds me of, is that you can save someone without even knowing you're doing it.
That is a lot to think about.
I'll be honest, that is very far from the interpretation I had of this route.
Interesting.
Okay.
I'm admittedly same, but at the same time, I fully understand and agree with where you're coming from. From what I took is like, because again, the whole point about this route is that you meet Hikami on a sunset day. On the first time you barely even notice him, but like just a few conversations and you strike this like friendship. And the way you what you said to me is like, it recontextualizes a lot, because I always saw this route as Hikami using his connection to save Kohei, because that's what he says, is that Hikami gives more of a vague idea of what the Eternal World is. It's a place where people go when there's no point for them and there's nothing for them in the world. There's nothing to find. And Hikami tells Kohei initially, you just need a girlfriend. But clearly, as we've established with Hikami himself, that's not necessarily the case. And I've always taken this as more of just like a metaphor, or not just a metaphor, a way of saying that it's not about the specific relationships, but it's not about getting a girlfriend, but rather it's the relationships and connections people have with people that can pull and save people back from the Eternal World, which we've talked about this before, but I've always thought the Eternal World was an allegory for suicide and also escapism, essentially, just like trying to run away from the world as it is, trying to run away from people. And because lifing is very hard, and every single day, like there's always going to be a lot of troubles and a lot of things that go wrong, and especially with Kohei, we've seen that as much of a bad person as he is, it's not necessarily that he was always that way. It's because a lot of the things that he had to endure in childhood, he was basically parentless because his father died, and his mother, while she did do her best to take care of them after his sister's passing, as far as I remember, she basically abandoned him to his aunt. So
the last time Kohei and his mother spoke was at Misao's funeral.
Yeah, which is like, she basically abandoned him.
Yeah,
so they never
that's
explicitly.
bad.
It's really messed up. So it's like, they never say it, but Kohei was quite literally saved by Nagamori, because literally the only, like, Nagamori, he met him after Misao's funeral, and
yes,
like Kohei, like every sign we've had about Kohei is that after that scene, something about him changed and he was just broken inside. But Nagamori hitting him in the head with a rock and making him angry to the point that he eventually just began to torture her eventually. While it is cruel on Kohei's part, it is literally the only thing that kept him human. Cause like,
right, and like this route like opened my eyes to that a little bit. But yeah, go finish and then.
Yeah, because like as we've established after Misao's funerals, that Kohei was just empty, and he felt like there was like a part of him that wanted him to go back and just reunite with Misao and run away from the world. Ever since I saw that, and then I read this route, it just clicked with me. Like, of course, Kohei was struggling this whole time. That's why he made so many of the horrible decisions and acted so badly to everyone. Because we also see the same in Hikami, but Hikami is a very different type of. He very much wears his current state on his sleeve. He's very calm. He's very quiet.
But is it only that way because he sees a lot of himself in Kohei? Because like we don't know what he's like outside of his interactions with Kohei, but like I kind of think it's only because he sees himself in Kohei and that he's just kind of more in tune with people in that way. I just like I'm speculating a lot, and you kind of have to if you want to know anything about Shun, because in reality we don't know that much about him.
No, we don't. What as we've established, the scenes with him are very, very, very small, but
it's maybe an hour of content to read this route, and half of it is spent skipping through Nanase's route.
Not even an hour. I'd give it like half that,
yeah.
And I'm a slow reader.
I always took this as. Because the first time we meet Hikami, we don't see him. He's just offhandedly mentioned by Kohei that he's just the other guy in the club that just happened to show up that everyone else didn't. And I always took that as him being a quiet person, because he didn't interact with Kohei the first time. But I could be wrong. Again, we don't have any confirmation.
Right.
But he did on the second time, and that's when their actual interactions start. That's when we see the god tier CG, which is so pretty.
He is so handsome.
He's
like,
so good.
What on earth? Oh, and like shout outs to his seiyuu. I don't have like a big deep like analysis of his seiyu's work like I do for Akane's, which we'll get to later, but he just sounds very attractive. Like,
he's very nice.
Honestly, both of you have pretty radically different interpretations that I do for what goes on at the end of this route. But
let's hear another one. Maida said this was open to interpretation.
I think we should establish just what happened and what is said on the last day that Shun is met. because it ties in very directly with that ending and what's said during it. Okay, I guess if I'm giving my interpretation, this actually goes a bit past that. It's after Shun takes his final leave of Kohei and basically vanishes and leaves him to figure out the aftermath. And what's said is that Kohei discovers an obituary for Shun, that he died at some point.
Okay.
This is said very explicitly. His death is acknowledged by other people, is the important thing. This is not an eternal world disappearance the way we know of it. And that's not to say he's not dealing with it. In fact, if you consciously choose to tell Shun that you don't want to meet with him during the second meeting, I think, he'll basically just tell Kohei goodbye, and then Kohei gets the feeling that suddenly he's not even in the room anymore after exiting. I think he is struggling with the eternal world in the same way Kohei is, but I don't think he gets saved in the end. What I think happens is that the bond he forms with Kohei allows him to die a natural death.
Interesting.
Because it's said that the main thing that even led to his struggle with the eternal world, it seems that he's dealing with a serious illness that barely let him even leave the house. And it was not cured at all. It's during... Yeah?
You know, I think that's fair. That's fair, because they did mention that, and that is also something that is very, like, it is something that's like you blink and you miss, because it's like 2 lines at like 3. They don't spend much time on it. It's just mentioned offhand at the ending, but that is fair.
I don't think these two are mutually exclusive, though.
Well, I mean, that's fair, but the meaning I got out of the final scene with Shun seemingly meeting Kohei again on the street is that that's not the real world. I think this is Kohei having been taken by the eternal world, and this is what he pictures when he gets there. He talks about how he genuinely owes Shun, and that he's become, that he did consider him a friend. And as I'll talk about a little later, Kohei is somewhat unconsciously, but also consciously at times, in control of what his eternal world looks like. I think this is just his way of trying to make amends, or at least come to some finality with what happened to Shun. He's imagining that Shun's bond saved them both in the end.
I'm going to point to one, small set of lines that slightly leads me to believe that you're wrong.
Yeah.
But you could be right. So don't take this as I'm definitely challenging it, but I'm going to challenge it a little bit, which is a set of lines from Shun here. In short, you need, and he says this in, I think, the third meeting. In short, you need to form a bond with another person. Miracles are nothing more than the result of bonds formed between people, and it's also the only thing that can save us. So he does have some talk about miracles here, which, again, Kisaya, miracles, this is not the first time he will do it. Or rather, this is not the last time he will talk about that symbolism. So, I like the interpretation that it could be the eternal world and Kohei's view of it, but I don't think that's what it's trying to say, at least. Because why else would the miracles symbolism even be there if it's not going to be utilized?
Yeah, that's a good point. Big disclaimer, especially for this episode, when it comes to anything symbolic or thematic or
we don't know
anything abstract, I am I am terrible with that, with any
Well,
kind of story,
like,
but especially visual novels.
That's not true. You're good at that because I didn't even think of that. But the thing is,
Well,
with this game in particular, one, we don't know, and that's just something really cool about this game because we could talk about this and like any one of us could be right, and all of us could be right, or all of us could be wrong. We don't know.
I don't think there isn't a right or wrong answer because, as again, a lot of this is up to interpretation.
Well, do you
But-
think Maida and Hisaya had the answer in their head and wanted us to figure it out, or do you think they didn't have the answer and want us to figure it out? Because those are different.
Okay, and this is something it's like I've had to deal with a lot of other fiction that have like open endings. I
Sure.
think it's a case where the writer might have had some idea of what they're thinking of, but even they do not think that their answer is like the definitive answer. They want viewers to also come to their own conclusions and figure things out for themselves. At least that's my theory. Again, I'm not a writer in the same way as like these really classic creators, so I can't say for sure. But if I were to make an open ending, that's how I would think when I would be creating it.
Understandable, yeah.
I see
So-
that. I was going to say, like, on the other hand of my struggles with more abstract text, I think I am very good when it comes to catching the literal details of a story, of what's being said or shown, or sometimes even what isn't being said or shown at times, and just forming the connections to everything from there. That's why I was able to give that whole Nanase speech, because I looked over every scene and I connected everything bit by bit like that. That is always my strength, but that's what leads me to this conclusion. Just seeing the obituary mentioned plus some other examples of what Kohei's Eternal World actually looks like just leads me to believe that, at the least, I believe that it's possible that that Kohei does not find salvation in this route.
I think like if we're considering the obituary comment here, we also like this is also not mutually exclusive with the suicide interpretation of the Eternal World, because like what could be happening here in all of the routes in this game is Kohei is, or rather each route is showing two possibilities, one where Kohei dies and one where he doesn't, and they're showing them together in one route as like an abstract painting of it. But regardless, coming back from the Eternal World because the bond and how the bond can save you is, I think, the ultimate message behind the Eternal World. And there are things we'll talk about when we get into the Akane segment that support this idea, I think.
That's fair. That's because, like I said, that's taking the Eternal World as a symbolic entity in of itself, and that's not how I see it when I read what's going on literally.
Yeah.
That's what forms my different interpretations. But I like the interpretation you come to with this, Lucci, because I don't like my depressing theory.
I mean, as we've said, this is like all up to interpretation. We do not have solid answers. We never will have solid answers. That's like the original writers did not make this with intention of giving everyone solid answers. But I think we got the best we got here, and I like how I feel like it's interesting that we have one route, and it's not even like an hour long. Yet we're all able to like view it in very different ways that completely stand out from each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like the interesting part about open-ended stories, that it makes you think. And I think something that makes you think, especially with one, is what like leaves an impact. It keeps you remembering back and just it takes up that brain space. And that's what makes one very classic and memorable for its time, is that it did things differently. It had these questions, and it took risks. These things that other Galgate typically wouldn't have. It's what gives it its identity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, why it still holds up today and why it was a game worth remaking 25 years later.
Yeah, exactly. All right, have we said mostly of what we all have wanted to say about the Shun route? Because
Yeah, we can get into ratings. Like I don't think you rated it Manpig, but I'll give mine at least. I gave this route a 9. And like the only reason it's not a 10 is because it's barely even a route. But like when I look at my own interpretation, at least, I think it is like I think it's a beautiful message.
it's very fair.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
I didn't give this route a rating myself because I feel like it's not, I didn't really take the same kind of thing, and it's not, I never felt like it was trying to provide the same kind of like message or like impact that a typical route had. Obviously, it's like very short. It's there partially to explain things and also to add a new character that adds to one. It's very essential that Hikami is there because he honestly kind of just changes a lot of the eternal world, because like we get the answer from him that Koei needs a girlfriend, but as we see, that may or may not be the case. Like there are certainly a lot of uh like little connections is what I feel like the Hikami route really talks about, because the whole route by default is a very, very short route that's very brief and almost fleeting. And while we don't interact with Hikami that much, he does leave an impression. So it's like, on one hand, I really like this route. On the other hand, it just is. It's not a Galgate route. I feel like it's so different, and like what it's trying to provide, I can't really rank it in the same way that like accurately like compares it to the other stories in this game. Like it is so. It's like comparing Nekogari to like Angel Beats or Little Busters. Like we're looking at different things, and I can't really give a rating comparison here.
Yeah. Scout, did you rate this route, or did you also not do that?
I mean, if I had to look at it as a whole, like I'd give it something like a 7, because I think what is there is very interesting and solid, and it gives you a lot to think about and it leaves an impression. But again, it's like it's half an hour.
Yeah.
And to be honest, you don't always get a ton from each conversation with Shun. It's mostly the last two that really start making you think. So
yeah,
within the confines of its length, I think it's very good. But when I compare it to like any other route, I can't put it that high.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. And also, like, I'm basing this on a theory behind what the route is trying to say, not what it's actually necessarily trying to say. But it's a message that does mean a lot to me, so I'm gonna stick with it.
I mean, that's just the thing with all our opinions. We all have
absolutely.
our different ones because we all saw these things differently.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Best girl time.
Yeah, okay. It's definitely time. So, for those who don't know, I am probably one of the biggest Akane fans on the planet. This is the girl that literally sold me on Galgate, and
I've joined the cult after the remake. So, trust me, I'm right there next to you now.
Oh yes, this
gotta be in my top 5 girls right now, at least key girls. That is.
It's either her or Komari that's like my favorite key hero, or it is either her or Komari. I feel like in terms of like dynamic, also because like God, everything about this character. Where do I even begin?
I know where to
begin. First of all. Yeah.
Well,
okay, so let's.
If we're talking character right now, do we want to talk the introduction?
Yes. So we have. So
the very first scene. I have so much to say just on the first scene.
I need.
We have so much to backtrack because we haven't talked about Akane because we were saving it all for. So we have to go all the way back to very early in the common route when we first meet her in the field. Is it the field?
the empty
Yeah, no,
lot.
it's the field.
Let me say, you two said you thought Misaki had the best introduction out of all the heroines in this, and she's a very strong choice. But for me personally, not only does Akane have my favorite heroine introduction in this VN, she has my favorite out of all of Key so far. Even more than something like Misuzu or Minagi. Just
that's very fair.
I think I'm with you now, actually. Just after going through everything again in preparation for this episode and rereading the route and the remake, I think I'm with you on, like, at the very least, of everything in, like, the early Key era, like pre-Little Busters, this is probably the best heroine introduction.
Like, we really need to set the scene. This is on the first rainy day that happens on 1, which is the first of many. And we shouted out the backgrounds before on the first episode, but the rainy day backgrounds in the remake are the perfect rainy day mood to me. They look incredible.
Beautiful.
And
they are absolutely gorgeously.
And you get
we've talked about this, but the colorists in this game, they popped off. Like the back Mocha and all the colorists, they made an amazing piece. Jesus Christ.
Marmalade did a lot of the coloring. I think they mostly did the CGs and the characters. But shout outs to Marmalade. Like
you can definitely see just the amount of effort and detail that got into this. Oh, and also like the sound effects and like the moving rain add so much here. Like I feel like, especially like the
animated rain, the
animated rain, that is just, it's such a good vibe. It's like you take 2023 technology to enhance what's like already an amazing vibe of the original game, and it just increases the depth so much more. I loved it.
And you get the incredible track that is White Like the Snow playing, which is the normal rainy day theme, which also does a ton to the atmosphere. But that's
probably my favorite OST in all of 1.
No. But then as Kohei goes through the rainy streets alone, he comes to this empty lot that he recognizes from his childhood, and the mood just instantly changes. You come across the loneliest looking place like in the entire game, and the track Rain starts playing for the very first time, and it's I actually got really emotional seeing this scene again in the remake for the first time.
Me too.
And standing within there is Akane.
It is very, like, you do make a very good argument. It's like one of the best introductions. I mean, I like both of them. Misaki's, I feel, has like a better, like, it's the sunset that really sells me on that, and also like just getting to meet her and her personality.
Misaki sells the girl more. Akane sells the mood more.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You barely even learn anything about her from this interaction. This is the first time Kohei has even paid attention to her outside of learning her name. And it comes and goes without really learning anything. But the mood, the atmosphere that it sets up, the sense of mystery around her. I don't think I've ever been so interested in a heroine in a visual novel before after getting so little.
I do not agree with that, and here's why I don't agree. This is like one thing I really wanted to make a point to talk about. In that first meeting, you see Akane, and she's acting like a typical kudere for a while, but right as Kohei is about to leave, she says, wait, and then says, never mind. Just from that little thing that she is reaching out. She doesn't know how to, and she might not necessarily want to, but somewhere deep down she needs to. And it is one of my favorite aspects of that scene, and I didn't notice it the first time. I didn't notice it until the remake, and I kind of knew what Akane was like as a character. So it really sold everything about
Context
it.
Oh
adds
yeah,
a lot.
I'm talking in the context of a first meeting. This is a scene that
Understandable,
changes a lot in a little ways after reading her route and understanding what she's going through. That especially applies to the last few lines of the scene where Kohei is trying to convince her to hurry up and get to school because he's worried she'll catch a cold. And she just says she'll be fine because fools don't catch colds.
Love that line too.
And then she does get a cold.
Yeah.
She's a bit funny. Oh, she's so precious. But like, yeah. God, this is like something I do want to start about saying, like, with Akane, and that's why I consider her like one of the best heroines, is that you get a genuine progression with her relationship. She is someone who shuts everyone out. That is like, you quite literally start from page 0 with Akane. You don't get even with the good impression you get with her, you don't form much of a connection aside from the little one-off lines. And as we've mentioned in previous podcasts, Akane is completely avoidable. If you do not chase after her, she has no scenes of like major importance. She's completely avoidable, and nothing will change with your relationship with her.
You do have to meet her at school I think twice. But like, it's very easy to just for Kohei to start ignoring her, and it does make perfect sense. He sees her a couple of times, he's interested, but if he chooses to ignore her, she'll leave his life. You know, she won't come back in it. And I feel like this is the most I mean, it's a weird thing to think about in a Gauge, but I do think about it in this one in particular. It is the most realistic version of ignoring the heroine in this game.
Yep. And that's exactly what I love about it.
Yeah.
She doesn't completely vanish. She will pop up a handful of times unavoidably, but if you're not going for her route, they'll be like a couple of lines long, and that's it.
Right.
One thing that really stands out to me is that if you don't go on her route, you do actually run into her very late in the common route. But Kohei just says, if you stay out here, you'll catch a cold, and then he just walks away because it's none of his business.
Oh, yeah.
That's like, she's still there, but you haven't formed a meaningful connection with her, so there's nothing to do. It's like, she's just another classmate. You found one of her odd habits, and you just leave it at that. I don't like normal people when you just don't pay attention to them. They're just there.
Yeah.
And that's what also makes, I feel like, the connection so realistic, is that you have to build your connection with her from ground zero. You need to form everything with her by actively pursuing her. And like, when you eventually do, you do kind of have to sort of be a bit of a visual novel protagonist, and that you just stalk this poor girl, because she literally goes out of the room because she doesn't want to be bothered by you, and then you just hop into. It's
just like, you're annoying, and I'm like, if I could say that to everyone who annoyed me, my life would be so much better. But I can't do that. Like,
I mean,
as far as Hisaya Kohei goes, this is the route where he's probably the most questionable, but he's still very much above the depths he can fall to other.
The problems go away pretty quickly because, and here's the thing that, like, if you're like somewhat understanding of Japanese culture, this is obvious, but for some people it might not be, especially in Shirafune's version of the translation. Once she starts calling Kohei by his first name in like their 4th or 5th meeting, you know that she doesn't actually hate him being there. She's just, being a contrarian because that's kind of in her personality. But like, once the first name thing happened, I'm like, okay, she's not actually that bothered, so I can't be mad at Kohei for this.
It's not like he's like trying to be malicious. He genuinely wants to get to know her, because again, that's, if you choose to pursue her, because I really wanted to, it's because of that first meeting. It's like, what is this character's deal? So honestly, like, while I might not like actually do this in person, there is definitely a part of me deep down that if I saw someone like this, I'm like, what is your deal? Why are you doing this? Like, I would
Same.
have these questions, and Kohei is just one of these people who does what he thinks. That's just how he is. So him chasing after Akane after seeing that is
he's
not out of
stalking
character.
her to pull her hair or anything, so
Yeah,
it's
it's
okay.
not. This isn't a Nanase situation. He's genuinely curious and wants to get to know her. And to be fair on him, he actually does so in a pretty decently normal way. Not necessarily in like he's not like a real person. He's not gonna like strike up a conversation. But Akane, to be fair, is someone who pushes people away. So Kohei has to be a bit more daring, and you get to know her through just having lunch with her. And at first, it's like you just eat lunch with her. That's one step. And next time, it's like she doesn't finish her lunch, and you offer to help her finish the rest. That's like step 2, and you guys find a common thing to enjoy. If you notice, that's the first time Akane truly accepts Kohei is when they find some common ground. They have like a common interest. And I think it's like the food that they like. That's another step, and that's like what I like about the Akane route, common route, is that the progression is very easily noticeable, and that's what makes a good romance for me. I love like slow eventual progressions as their relationships build. This is something I feel like a lot of galgay, even like my favorite galgays ever, I feel like they don't always do this as much for one reason and one reason only, is that the heroines tend to like the main character first. Especially when it comes to childhood friend heroines. Looking at you, Akane from Two Heart. I love you, but this is like one of my quote-unquote biggest pet peeves is that I really prefer, or it's not really a pet peeve, it's a preference. I much prefer it when a relationship is built from ground zero. And this is something that I just enjoy a lot more, is just getting to open that shell slowly but surely and see that progression grow into a stronger connection over time. Because like, especially with Akane route, in the common route, you can skip all of her scenes. Of course, we've established this. But once you do, she has a lot of scenes. Like,
this
probably
is
as
the
much as
longest route in the
Nagamori.
game. When you like think about how much new it like, because if you're avoiding Akane when you're going for all the other routes and reading Akane last, which is what Keyverse recommends, you'll be going through a lot of common route again. So like, even if the post common route stuff at like the turn of the year is about the same length, it will be the longest route in the game in terms of how much new content you have to go through.
Yeah, she's nearly a daily kind of presence once you first meet her. Like, Misaki has the most mandatory scenes of any Hisaya heroine, so she usually has the most presence, but once you start going after Akane, it's like you'd think she was the cover girl compared to just how often you are seeing her and how much you get.
But at the same time, I understand, like, design-wise, Nagamori had a wider appeal in that era.
I've also mentioned that Nagamori does things very differently as like a concept, so I get why she was chosen as the main heroine, and also a childhood friend. Childhood friend,
understandable.
Especially during the 90s, is like it was very popular.
Well, yeah, like Akane from no, not Akane. Akari from Two Heart, you just mentioned, like, who was the cover girl of Two Heart.
She is a childhood friend, yes.
Yes. Manpig, can I talk about one, like, little thing in, like, just a little shout out in the lunch scenes that you didn't mention?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I won't add context to this because we can't really talk about context for later, but, like, we'll come back to this. One of the things you were talking about in the lunch scenes is how they're having little conversations and finding little things they have in common. And one of the things that like jumped out to me, again with context, is that they both said, or rather Kohei says, if I could, I would sleep until just after noon every day. And Akane says, me too. Aww. And I honestly think they are saying this for the same reason, but they don't know they are saying this for the same reason. Because when you're depressed, all you want to do is sleep.
It needs to be said, these two are very similar people. They don't seem like it at first, but
because they don't know that they're similar at first, and I love that. It's like they're realizing that they not only are similar people, and you're building that part of the relationship from ground zero, like Manpig said, but they have a lot of similar struggles.
And there's like 2 layers to it, because when the similarities first start popping up, it's usually things like their food preferences or how they do on certain subjects in school and stuff. Like, very explicit comparisons between them that you can see them slowly forming a connection. But it goes much deeper than that still. And neither of them realize it for a long time. I'm just gonna say, this is the best common route of any heroine, like, easily to me.
100%.
I definitely. It is as I said. I think this is like one of the best like dynamics I've ever seen in visual novels. Period. And in terms of like a galge, it is just straight up my favorite. I have read a pretty good amount of galge at this point. I love this stuff, and I've read Two Heart, and I love Two Heart to death. Nothing from Two Heart scratched the Akane itch. Not quite as well, because Akane's slow, eventual, like, just very simple yet natural relationship is something I have loved the moment I read this game. This is something I've never ever gotten replicated ever again, and I just love this route for what it offers. That slow, eventual opening up of her, getting to know her, and building that connection. It's so good. This is the reason I read galge. I want to get to know my hero, and I want to get into their heart. And this experience is just one of a kind. I love it.
Yeah, it needs to be emphasized. It is slow, but they go through so much even before Christmas starts approaching. At the start, they're just eating lunch together, with Kohei basically forcing himself into the picture. But slowly, Akane not only accepts his presence, but even starts inviting it. At one point, he falls behind when they're both going out into the courtyard, and she actively asks him if he's coming, and that's the first little moment.
That's so cute.
I loved it.
And eventually it progresses to them walking home together, and it needs to be said, Kohei's interest in her does start initially with just that first meeting and wondering what is going on there, but especially once he realizes he's not really getting any answers from that, it mostly disappears, and it becomes clear he really does enjoy being around her and getting to talk with her. To the point that he will wait and he will go to his club room and take a nap after school just so he can walk home together with her one day.
Which is so cute.
And we get to see her waking him up.
That scene was so adorable.
And
I
Roy
love
was replaced by Akane.
And the one thing that doesn't even seem that big on a first read through again, but became huge to me on my reread, was eventually it changes the scenes on rainy days when he meets her in the empty lot. Now, and from the start, they both have this sort of connection with rainy days. On rainy days, Akane goes and stands in the empty lot as long as she can, and Kohei wakes up early and decides to go out on his own for no particular reason. And that stays the routine even after they start getting to know each other. But eventually, when Kohei meets Akane in that empty lot, she actually decides to leave early and go to school with him. And it doesn't seem like much at first, but it is probably the biggest moment of this early Akane stuff.
One thing about this route that like really is shown so much by Tachibana Hina's voice acting. This is not the first time I have mentioned it on this podcast, and it will not be the last, is that you can feel the cold sadness behind her words. And it adds to the intrigue, but it also, when you see it slowly slip away, there's like such a subtlety to her acting that gives us some intrigue as the reader, but also just shows really what she is like as a character. And I remember saying this during my read through, is that this Seiyu this is her first role in a visual novel and was cast as Satomura Akane. Not the easiest role, and she nailed it. She nailed the little subtleties in the changes of everything you're talking about, Scout, where you see like the coldness slowly slipping away and the sadness behind her words becoming more and more obvious.
Oh yes, this is, besides Mizuka, this is probably the biggest voice actor like upgrade for the remake.
For me, even more so. That's just how freaking good she is to me.
And I actually want to shout out the live 2D when it comes to Akane too, because normally, even with it, she is the least animated character, literally. She just kind of does her normal poses most of the time with Kohei, but there are times, especially later on as they're getting to know each other, that she actually starts becoming more animated, and not only is it adorable, but it really shows how open she's becoming. Like, the first example I can think of is the ill-fated Taiyaki trip, which is the first time that really tips you off how much of a sweet tooth she has, and when it
obligatory
becomes
happy ugu noises.
Yes.
I want to build on that up actually. There's another reason I love Akane, is that Akane is her own person. She's like one of the most well-realized like people in this whole game, because we initially get interested in her from our first meeting. She seems very sad, but while she does have moments of sadness, like anyone else, she has her own interests and hobbies, and she likes certain things and dislikes certain things. And you learn that as you go around. You meet Akane, you're initially interested in her for her very iconic introduction, but you like her more because of the little things, like, again, her being really upset about not getting to eat some taiyaki. It's like she feels like a living, breathing human, and that's what makes her such a good heroine, and so like that's what makes also her dynamic so well built up. It's those little things of getting to know her. You as a player have to actively like make those decisions to get to know her, and I feel like that's what adds to the experience of this being like one of the best Galgame routes of all time.
Yeah, like it's not until like partway into the common route when you realize that, oh, she likes to cook. I didn't know that. That's cool, you know?
Yeah,
or like other little things like how little she eats, you know? Which obligatory, that's also could be seen as a sign of depression, but that also could just be a character quirk. I don't know for that one.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a character quirk, because she's like the person. She says she's gonna eat both waffles when they buy waffles, and
but
I think
also,
it's just like depending on the food.
Well, but that's only
stuff.
for sweets. That's only for
that's
sweets,
fair.
and that's an important distinction, I think. Like, because serotonin boost.
I mean, I still have a limit for sweets as much as I love sweets, so.
Akane isn't that weak. But it genuinely is. You're getting like something new with every scene with her, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Exactly. That's what makes her like relationship and build up so good.
Yes.
And so the two other scenes from this common route that we need to shout out are, first, the vending machine prank from Kohei.
One of the least mean pranks he plays, and also he gets some good karma for it.
One of the funniest scenes of Kohei being a jerk.
Yeah.
So he's reminiscing on how he wishes he could get a different reaction from her one of these days, and he comes across a vending machine that sells a drink that, as far as he's concerned, is like a biological weapon. It's terrible. And he decides he wants to see her reaction to drinking it. he just devises this whole plan of conveniently stopping in front of it and buying it for her on just as a random suggestion. And as soon as he tries to put that into practice, everything goes wrong.
It's really funny. It's
And
like,
yeah.
one of my favorite parts about it is that Akane is like willing to like follow him, and she's so confused. It's like both of them are like acting really dumb in this situation, because on one hand, Akane is like she definitely knows something's up, but she's still willing to go along with it and just isn't aware of what Kohei is planning. And Kohei is like really trying his best to hide something that he clearly can't hide. It's so funny.
He is dying inside the whole time, and eventually he has to pretend that he just slipped when he orders it. And
It's
her
so
only
good.
reaction is that she feels bad for it being his treat.
She doesn't. It's so funny. I love him.
And after all that trouble, all that pain and suffering, she actually thinks it's delicious, and he is so bewildered that he gives away his whole plan because he
Do
can't
y'all
believe her.
remember what kind of juice it even was? Because I forgot, to be honest.
I
He
think it was
only
something
describes
red
it in
bean.
the worst terms.
I think it
have
was
no
like a
idea.
red bean drink. I could be wrong. I don't
Oh,
remember.
okay.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Oh, actually,
Well-
that reminded me. And after this, he has to promise to buy her a waffle, which I think leads
does.
into the next scene with Mio becoming a supporting character of the route. And I absolutely love this decision, because not only is Mio just a joy to have around, but she instantly reveals a whole other side to Akane as well.
Oh
Right,
yeah, like
yeah.
this is like another one of my favorite new CGs for the remake, is the one of Mio braiding Akane's hair. And like you see Akane kind of has like a protective side to her, where she likes people who she perceives as, you know, like needing protection, you know, like she sees her as this little child, and it's just an adorable interaction between the two
And
of
during
them.
it, you get like the first clear smile from her too.
It's
Right,
so
yes.
precious. It's absolutely so precious, and that's like she just feels so well realized. That's why I like her.
And on a smaller note, but this is one of the last scenes of the Akane common route, there's the scene of them out on the town after exams finish, and not only is it really nice because it shows how far they've come just going out on the town for hours with each other, even if they don't have anything in particular they want to do, but it ends with that adorable scene of Akane getting completely distracted by some stuffed animal in a window.
Okay,
Oh,
I do
yeah.
I do have to mention this. This is like the biggest problem a lot of people have with the one
we
remake.
gotta talk about it. Like
I
I
was
hate that
so
we gotta talk
angry.
about it, but we gotta talk about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Rip
so,
the master.
The master. So
I just said
initially-
it.
Yeah, in the original script of this game, and they make it very obvious, there's like, or in the original version of this game, in the original one, the plushie that Akane looks at is this weird, strange, bizarre cat plushie. And this thing is known as the Master. This thing is, like one of Tactics' like mascots or something.
Did it originate? I think it was in some mini game mode from Moon, but I don't think did it originate from there?
Either Moon or Dose. I can't remember for sure.
But
Either
either
way,
No, it's I have the answer to this. It's an item you can buy for Monami in Dose, is
So,
where
yeah,
it
so it's
actually
Dose.
originated, and the joke is that she hates it, and you actually lose a bunch of affection points for giving it to
That's
her.
incredible.
And like it's really expensive too, like you use all your money to buy it. It's like basically
Oh,
an
that-
Easter egg in the game.
Oh, that's where the other part of the joke comes from. So
Yeah.
in the Akane scene, not only is it the master, but it is hideously expensive. It's 500,000 yen.
It's
Yeah.
like, what the hell?
But she is absolutely enraptured by it, which not only shows
it is absolutely bizarre, and it's like the text describes it as bizarre. Like it's like this, like almost like very. It's hard to describe. It's weird. They treat it more as a creature than a stuffed animal.
Yes.
But then in the remake, they just make it a stuffed teddy bear. So
yeah,
the text doesn't
regular.
match. The text literally does not match what is being shown. That's like, it is not just like an issue that an Easter egg is erased. It's a case where what is being described does not match what is being shown. And it's like there's this obvious huge gap.
It's not just a cool reference, it's what the scene was written around.
Yeah, I can't really make an excuse for this one. Like, there are some where, like, I kind of understand the changes made for the remake, but, like, this wasn't even a problem in the original, so I don't know why they felt the need to change this. No one disliked the Master. Those who knew the Dose reference thought it was really funny, and those who didn't are like, huh, that's weird. But, like, Kohei also thinks it's weird that Akane is so infatuated with this gross-looking thing, which just makes it even funnier.
Well, I would buy the Master for Akane. I might be broke, but I would buy it for her.
Well, yeah, because, like, the joke is that, unlike Monami, Akane would like it. It would be worth the 500,000 yen.
Big, fluffy thing that's just bizarre. But yeah, that's like the
Viral says, honestly, Akane herself looks better in the original CG too. I do not agree with that. I think Akane's redesign is just infinitely better than her original design.
In these CGs, like, it's kind of close to me, but she just looks even more, like, out of it and utterly captured in the remake to me, which I think fits better.
Yeah.
It fits better, but it should have been the Master. I miss him.
Shoutouts to Yukito. Yukito made an edit that puts the Master back into the remake CG, and, like, he did it so seamlessly where it's just really funny. So, yeah.
Should have been how.
Yeah, I remember that.
So someone should make a patch for this game, not for, like, just to add the Master.
Just to change the one CG. We'll call it the Master patch.
The Master, yes, precisely. This is genius. It's a perfect idea. Nothing could possibly go wrong. But,
amazing.
Yeah, that's the biggest critique I have of the Akane route, and that's like the only criticism. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, so after this, what was the next one? Oh, right,
Chico.
we're talking about Mio.
We gotta talk about. We'll do the Mio thing, but then we gotta talk about Shiko, because I have some things to say about Shiko.
I mean, yeah, I didn't have much to say about Mio. Is that I find it really nice to her that we got Hisaya's heroines again appearing in the Akane route. Like, we had Misaki in the Mio route, now we have Mio and Akane's route. It's something that they didn't need to do, but they did it, and it made me smile, and I really like it.
Me too. I'm with you there.
Misaki even gets a short exclusive scene within Akane's route, and
2 of them actually. So there you go. Like,
it's not quite like Mayu's route, where it really felt like a culmination of all of Maida's heroines, but it's part of what makes this the most satisfying Hisaya route to end on, because everyone is getting acknowledged at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about Chico. I want her to beat me to death.
Manpig. Bro. Why?
Nobody's gonna get that. So,
I mean, like, I'm assuming it's an EFZ reference, but...
It is an EFZ reference. So, for those who don't know, there's a Dojin key game, or a Dojin game where it just crossovers all of key characters, and it's a fighting game where they beat each other, and they fight. You don't think about it, it's a Dojin game. And
it is also one of the best Dojin fighters ever made. Like, it still has a very... very active community even today, despite being a 2001 Dojin game. Like, it's so weird. It's like an incredibly well-balanced fighting game, as long as you're not playing as Kana. So
yeah, Kana is like broken.
Kana is banned, but everyone else is pretty well balanced.
Yeah, and one of like Akane's attacks is the Dem Shiko roll, where she calls in Shiko, who's wearing boxing gloves, and she just beats the crap out of whoever's in front of her. It's really funny.
Oh yeah, there's tons of cute and dumb little references like that in EFC. It's a labor of love for sure.
Yes, and I want Shiko to beat me to death.
My God, you're so weird.
Shiko, it needs to be said, Shiko is a whirlwind of chaos and stupidity, like there never was.
But she occasionally has like these random one-off lines where she says something really poignant. Like one of my favorites is where, like you're in the middle of like a dumb conversation with her and Akane, and she says, Akane, you're not your usual cheerful self anymore. And like you kind of like do a double take, like your usual cheerful self. How serious do you take it? I take it seriously.
Oh, I take it very seriously too. That's a point I'm gonna have to come back to a bit
That
later.
is something you have to we'll talk about later, because as we all learn quickly, Shiko and Akane are childhood friends. They knew each other since very, very young. And like Akane demeanor to Shiko is sort of the same kind of demeanor she has with Kohei, in that she acts like she doesn't really care about her, but she very much does.
Yes, exactly, and I love it for that.
It is very subtly warm, even compared to her interactions with Kohei, which is, it's your proof that these really are friends, as absurd as it seems at first.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I do find it really funny and odd that she just appears and she's like wearing a completely different uniform. They even say in the game that she stands out and she shouldn't be there. And she's like, yeah, but I'm here, so I might as well stay. It's like, there's so many like things that just do not line up here. It's like, what are you doing here? How did you even get here? Why are you skipping school? This isn't okay. What are you doing here? It's one of those unanswered things, but I find it really, really funny.
She is kind of very cartoony, but she's very entertaining despite that.
And I adore her. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very popular. Like she has like a cult following.
Oh, she has, until the recent, announcement of the remake, but back in the 2010s, she had, more, lewd fan art than the rest of the one cast, and it's what the hell? Why? This one side character from this one route? Okay, cool.
She's just, she's very popular.
It makes perfect sense to me when you look at her original sprites, because... God damn, I swear she was absolutely stacked in the original.
She also does nothing. Like, she has, or I mean, like, not in that she literally does nothing. She only has one sprite. And it has, like, a few expressions.
She only has one pose, yeah. It's like,
yeah.
But, and a few faces. But I don't know where the popularity came from, but I'm not complaining about it because she's really cool. Like, I'll give another Shiko quote here. This one's from the party. I wrote this one down. Having fun during times like this can help us forget about the bad stuff in our lives. Like, how can you not love her? She's a storm, but like she ultimately just really cares for Akane, and it's like, yeah, she's caring, she's lovable, she's cute, like
she's kind of dumb, and I love her.
She's kind of dumb, and she stays out of the way when she needs to stay out of the way.
Yeah, she doesn't overstay her welcome, I feel like.
Yeah, which is like something that, like, I'll just say Shizuku in Tsumugi route does not do this. And it's one thing that, like, I really appreciate Shiko for even more after seeing how it can be done poorly.
Yeah, like, when she does show up, she's usually there to serve a purpose within the story.
Yes, exactly. Or just even within the slice of life. Like, we can get into... the Christmas party, if y'all want. Like, that doesn't have a whole lot of story context for Akane, but it is a normal thing that happens when, like, you're getting to know the girl you want to date. Sometimes you have to see how, like, you guys function together in a group setting, and that's what this is like when we have Shiko and Mio joining for this little Christmas party, and they draw on Mio's face.
By the way, one of my favorite scenes of the entire game, I'm just saying, it's like, it's not important for the story, but god damn it, is it an amazing character moment for all these characters. I love group dynamics. That's why I love Little Busters, and it's like the best group dynamic in all of one. We have all these like just really the thing about them is that while these guys are all here, none of them are necessarily fully responsible. Kohei's an idiot, we've established that. Mio is very naive and just like follows everyone else. Akane keeps to herself and she just is like a bit like reserved, and Shiko is just dumb amplified to 110. And we have all these people doing like a party together, and it's just like they're all just messing about, they're failing to make a cake. It's like it's not going well, but it's like this is how like parties go sometimes. It's like it's really funny, and it's just really heartwarming to see them all get along. And also Akane wife moment.
Oh yeah. When she takes over to bake the cake, that's
like, oh my god, the apron.
She puts on the apron, puts on the wife hat, and just starts wifing up. She is so like.
It's so 90s, honestly. Like, let's be honest about what this is. It's just so 90s, but that's what gives it so much charm.
It's a stereotype I will continue to love, and it's something I was like immediately appealed to me. I was like, oh, wife moment.
Yeah.
And her helping Kohei out with every time he runs into a roadblock when making the cake is like the most words she ever says in one sentence.
She's like surprisingly capable. It's like she's like when she actually like tries to like put things into like action, she's like instantly the leader. Like everyone follows her leads. Like, oh, she knows what she's doing really well, and she's very capable.
Yeah, it's lovely.
She even says one thing I love is that after that scene, when Kohei points out that she clearly knew what she was doing and she easily could have done it from the beginning, she said she didn't want to do that because she thought it was the most fun when everyone worked together on something.
He's so
Which is really
cute.
Awesome. I have to mention what Nari said. Akane's cooking is so nice that Kohei had to get his eyes back to see it. I'm like, oh my.
Yeah,
she does mention
he has eyes for this one CG, and it's like, what the hell? Why?
It's so off-putting. It's like, granted, I will say it adds to the CG. It looks great, and I'm so glad they did it. Why? I just question why it didn't for the
why
rest.
Didn't the rest of them have his eyes? Like,
he has really nice eyes. I think they would have fixed a lot of scenes.
Yeah, he like Mop Kohei is not as interesting.
I do not like Mop Kohei.
Yeah.
They would have definitely fixed the Misaki CG. Jesus Christ. But yeah.
Oh yeah, that one is particularly bad.
We finally got Kohei's eyes, and this is actually like one of the few times where the script was actively changed outside of the 8 scenes, because if you know Japanese laws, underage drinking is a big no-no. And that is like, surprisingly, it was like one of the highest priorities that they had, is that they couldn't include that. So in the original one, they just straight up drank alcohol. Like, that's just what they did.
Well, I looked this up, Manpig. If you have underage drinking, you have to put an 18+ label on it. I found out, even if there is no porn. So in order to maintain the 15+ label, they had to change the script for this one scene.
Well, there we go. So they did do that.
Yeah.
And
they still left like the implications that,
yeah, this was the case with the PlayStation port as well. It's just they cannot do that.
In like certain routes, like Kohei actually has Sumi and a few other friends over for winter break, and they still left in like some of the implications that they were drinking actual alcohol during it and just going crazy like that, but it's not as explicit as it is during this Christmas party.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like Mio gets like quote unquote drunk. This time it's like she's just which to be fair, I also like this trope a lot, that she thinks she's drunk but she's not. It's just a placebo drunkenness, which I find it absolutely
she's just
hilarious.
sleepy, which I think is even cuter. Like,
and then Shiko decides to draw on her face, which in the original was because she was drunk, but here it's just because she's Shiko.
To be fair, it is in character.
It's in character, drunk or not. Like, that's what makes it better.
And I think my favorite detail is that even in the original, Akane absolutely holds her alcohol like a pro.
Yeah, that's another funny thing, is that Akane just she doesn't seem drunk at all. It's like nothing changes. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is easily one of just the best scenes in the whole VN to me.
It's so funny.
There's so much to unpack, so many laughs to be had, and it's just really sweet, especially with shortly before the party starts, Shiko really has to convince Akane to actually come, because Akane mentioned she doesn't want to go to Christmas parties anymore. And Shiko is respectful, but she also makes it clear that, yeah, like you said, having fun times when you're down is a great way to just help forget that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the way it ends, I must mention, is like after this whole scene, and then they leave, Akane comes back and she's like the only responsible person. She like helps Kohei tidy up. And it's like, God, that's so heartwarming. But like right after that, it starts raining and it hits you like a truck, and she just goes back into the field and she just waits there again. And it's like you realize you remember why you were initially interested in this character. It's like we've grown to her as a person. You've grown to get to know her, but then her like original theme, the sad theme, plays, and then now that she trusts you a bit more, she's willing to explain more about why she's doing what she does, and it's that she's waiting for someone. And Kohei realizes, crap, I think I like her. And then he also realizes, crap, I think she likes someone else. And it's like that feeling is like a punch to the gut. It's like, oh
yeah. I think is this where we get Akane meant like giving the first hints of the childhood friend of hers?
Yes, I remember very clearly.
That's the first time. Is that she says she's waiting for someone? Yeah.
Someone who left her behind on this very spot, and that he meant so much to her.
Yeah, I wrote down this line too. This is the place where I last saw them. They meant so much to me. That's why I continue to wait here for them. He didn't even bring an umbrella with him.
And her saying that also makes Kohei realize, crap, I like her.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, after this, his entire mood tanks for the following days. He does not handle it well, and he can't even figure out why at first, but meeting her again is when he realizes. And it's one of the times out of all the routes where I feel the most sorry for him, just because it's, I don't know,
he's doing it right, and it's not necessarily working out for him.
Been there, buddy. Feels bad, man.
Yeah. Understandable,
my guy. It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll have a pizza together. I get you. But yeah.
Oh my god.
God, that was like, because especially after it came out, after like one of the funniest and most enjoyable scenes, it actually just hits like a truck. And that's like another thing I love about it. It just comes out of nowhere. And that's also kind of like what Rain is like to Akane. Is like it just comes out of nowhere. And the moment it happens, like she's like flipped like a switch. Like whatever enjoyment she might have had in the beginning, she's just like it just disappears, and she just goes back to wait in the field because she's lonely.
And that's what makes her walking to home with Kohei in those earlier days so significant. That's your hint in hindsight that she really is, like, she is very much opening up to him like no one else. But then this comes along and you see that she still can't let go of it either. She is very much torn between these two sides.
Yeah. This
Yeah,
route is
a
like
lot
such
of this is
well-built thing.
a lot of this is hard to talk about without a bit of the later context at what actually happened to this childhood friend. So I definitely want to come back to this scene when we get there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. For sure, but I mean, we won't have to wait long because, like, after this, like, this is like the moment where the plot starts, like, the slice of life ends and the plot starts kicking in. Like, after here, it starts raining in the like midday, and I think this is the time, like, in another common route, uh, or like in another common route where he's not on the Akane route. This is when Kohei reaches out and tells Akane, "You're gonna catch a cold" or something. I could be wrong. I might be
think
wrong.
it's a bit. Considering this is after Christmas, I think
Right, yeah.
that's
It
an
is after
earlier
Christmas.
scene. One of the times she would otherwise walk home with him.
Okay, fair
Yeah,
enough, but
once the year turns over, and the Christmas party is the last scene of the year in this route. Once the year turns over, you're on a route. It's just like, are you gonna get the good end or the bad end?
alright, yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So, either way, Akane doesn't come to school. And nobody knows what's going on. Even her teachers are like, well, she left house, so we assume she's just late. And Kohei's like looking at the storm outside, and it just hits him like, oh, she's out there. And so, and this is another one of like the weird guide things that if you tell Shiko to stay in the room and be a nice person to her, you will get a bad end, or you will get the bad end, yeah, because you won't be able to meet up with Akane, which is really, really weird. But if you do tell her to go out, if you like force her to go out, you run into her again in the shoe hallway, and she gives Kohei her umbrella, which, wow. Thank you so much for hiding that behind a choice. I really wish that one confused me a bit when I first read it. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Oh, I meant to be a terrible person to Shiko and just call her out. That's what I was doing wrong.
I get it from the perspective of acting like a responsible person, because
I got that one right on the first try. I never got that.
I'm happy for you. I'm just too nice. I'm just too nice for mine, I guess.
Because Shiko wants to just stay around and hang out in the classroom when she should be in her own school, and Kohei is actually being responsible and trying to call her out on that. So it's not completely out of nowhere.
It's not completely out of character, but yeah, that you basically have to shove her out of the classroom, and then she gives Kohei her umbrella, and then you meet Akane, and she has no umbrella that day, and she's just dead inside, and she collapses, and you have to be there for her, and that's that was a bit of a frustration. But the scene afterwards is like one of the most adorable scenes ever.
Oh yes.
It's just Akane wakes up and she's in the bed, and we get another mention of Kohei's aunt who helped her change into dry clothes, and
her pajamas are really
there.
cute.
Her pajamas are very adorable, and my Japanese friend, when I tweeted the CG, my Japanese friend said, "Wow, she sure grew in size."
Yes, I
Yeah.
think she
I was
did.
like, well,
I'm not complaining.
That's a fair comment.
Yeah.
All I have to say is they made one of the cutest CGs in the original even cuter.
It is very cute, and I was like, she does turn her eyes in the remake. It's like the extra variants add a lot to the scene, but like Akane's just bewildered, and then Kohei just drops the bombshells like, "You've been dumped. Just accept that and move on. This is like for your own sake. Just move on. This is clearly like holding you back and active, and as like we've just seen, it can be a genuine problem. So just move on." And those words just it's it is like one of the few times where the bluntness like is actually appreciated, and it genuinely helps Akane just
it's kind
accept
of
that
cathartic,
inside.
and it's why, like, here's my somewhat bold but not super bold claim here is that Kohei is actually good for her.
Yeah, that's not bold in the slightest.
Like, and you know, and it's I thought it kind of is because, like, oh, Kohei sucks, but no, he's good for her. I actually do think he is legitimately helping her, and her life is better with him in it.
Yeah, that is true, because Akane is someone who is very much not able to like take the extra step. She's very like passive as a person. Kohei is the opposite. He's very bold. So it's like if Akane needs to do something or needs something, Kohei is oftentimes a guy who will like specifically call her out and try and help her. It's like, if I don't think this isn't helpful for you, I'm gonna let you know. And she does this in this situation. And it's like, it's not even something that out of jealousy, is that he genuinely is concerned about her because she just collapsed. Like,
well,
Kohei's
yeah, like, notice
just a
how he
blunt person
waits
in
until
general.
this moment to say it, because he does see her again before, after learning that he thinks that she likes someone else, but he keeps it to himself until the moment where he realizes that it's genuinely harming her health.
Yeah, good. Which is like that is like one of the better like versions of Kohei just being blunt as heck, and I actually really appreciate that.
Same.
And just those words saving Akane and her like words of like gratitude and thanks afterwards. That's like that was the moment in the original game I was like, oh, this is the best heroine of all time. Like, my heart melted. That was so good. It's like it's like, to this day, I genuinely think it's like one of the best Galgame roots of all time. It's like this relationship was so well built up, and it's like that was the reward, the Kudere smile, the smile with the tears in her eyes. That's like, that's what I fight for. That's what I live for.
Yeah, like I'm so with you there.
It's just one of the best.
Said. The scene that follows up him telling Akane that she was dumped after that whole incident is basically her turning that whole situation on him now. He tells her very bluntly that he wants to take her on a date after school and to go to the park that they discovered earlier the route. And she tells him she doesn't want to go multiple times, and he does not know if she will come or not. And even once it starts raining, he continues to wait for her there, just trying to hold out as long as he can. And just when he's starting to doubt it and considering giving up, she comes there with an umbrella.
One thing I love about this is that you actually have choices in this. You have to tell Kohei to keep waiting.
Yes.
You do.
And if you don't do that, you get the bad end. It's really cool.
Yeah, and another thing I really, really, really love is the symbolism of her bringing the umbrella for Kohei instead. It's like she's actually moved on this time. And it's like this is when they actually start going out. It's like the most cutest thing.
The most satisfying like relationship upgrade in all of one.
Easily. Yeah, so absolutely.
Good. It's like this symbolism of Akane finally moving on and accepting Kohei as the person she truly cares for, and their kiss under the umbrella. It's like, oh, she finally brought the umbrella for someone who is actually there for her. It's like, oh, my heart, it's so warm now.
At the end of the day, like, I think like Akane's character journey, her development is, to me, it's about learning to love and trust again after what she had gone through in the past, which is it's a really relatable feeling for people who have been hurt before. And I think she is so strong about it. And it's really like, this scene was the one that really showed that for me.
It is really just a powerful relationship. And also, like, one thing I really appreciate is that CG of her, because we've seen Rain in this visual novel plenty of times. It's very like dark and dreary, but this one CG where she appears for Kohei in the rain, it's so bright and it's so vibrant. And I feel like that's like a reflection that the rain is finally clearing and it's no longer like a sad rain. Like we have hope and light in this, and I'm like, the visual direction's gorgeous.
Visual direction is so good. Was it? I forgot. Was it like that in the original, or is that a remake exclusive thing?
Don't
let
remember.
Let me go look. But yeah, it's another example of taking a familiar like symbol during a route and flipping its meaning partway through, like in Misaki's route, the red sunset symbolism.
Yeah.
Either way, I love this like new variation so much. It's so bright, it's so gorgeous. It's like one of my favorite CGs ever. But yeah, after that you get like wholesome couple moments, and it's so adorable. And my heart was so warm, and it's like this is the prime Galge experience. This is why I read Galge. It's just like these guys are just so cute, and they eat waffles, and it's like Kohei looks at the waffles like this is like the uber sweet one, like full of honey and sugar and like stuff. And it's like, and then Kohei's like, this is way too sweet. Akane is like drooling.
Of course, yeah. For the record,
and can I just say, I fully relate to Akane in this situation. Like, cause there is something in Hong Kong. I'm a Hong Kong person if you don't know, and in Hong Kong we do have waffles, and a typical Hong Kong style waffle is enough calories to like be a whole meal. You get the waffle, and then you slather in peanut butter. And then after you slather in peanut butter, you put condensed milk on it. And then after you do that, you put sugar on it. That is your typical Hong Kong waffle. Yes, it is horrible.
So hungry now.
It is horrible for your health. It is extremely calorific. But I love it. It's nostalgic, and it's like that moment. I was like, "Oh yes, Akane, you get me. You get me. You want those sweet waffles." I was like, I connected with her so much in that situation.
This is one of like my favorite, just little development tidbits. Is that the type of waffle that Akane eats is what Hinoe Itoru would eat for breakfast during the original one's development.
Oh my god,
she would buy them on the way to work, which I just think is really cute.
That's adorable.
So much sugar. It's like, but that's like the best part.
Yeah, and like Spiral says, based Hinoe in chat, and you can also see her eating one of them on the live drawing she did for Next Fest when she drew Nanase for the remake.
Oh, that's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
The original CGs we were talking about, they did not show much of the rain because it was much more focused on Akane.
On their faces, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is a remake thing, and I would say it's a great addition. Like
I'm with you.
Symbolism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely with you there, yeah.
And yeah, the scene of them going out for waffles is just so sweet because it shows they finally reached that great place for both of them in their relationship. They're just going out on what Akane is too embarrassed to call a date, but just actual dates for their own sake because they just enjoy it that much.
Yeah.
And it's so satisfying after how much Kohei had to fight to get to this place.
It is so rewarding. And it's like, it is like one of the cutest relationships ever, and then you once again get hit by the realization at the end of the eternal world, and it's like,
there's an extra layer to it this time, though, which I think is really cool. There's an extra layer
to it, yeah, and we'll learn that later. But it's like, just know it brings the same amount of dread I got from like the Misaki wrap up way earlier. It's just knowing that Akane already has had abandonment issues in the past. She's been abandoned by her close friend, and now that she's finally found someone and she's brought that umbrella for someone else, he's also on the verge of being disappeared too. And it's like,
Even like before we get to the story behind Akane's childhood friend, like right after it happens, there's another one of these short little interactions that means a lot with context where Kohei asks her, "What would you do if I left and went somewhere?" Which he asks several of the heroines. But Akane's answer is very different. Instead of like wondering what he means by it, her immediate answer is, "I don't want you to." She understands the question so much more than any of the others. And like, whether it's because of the childhood friend or whether it's because she also has some similar feelings to him, the fact that she gets it really stood out to me for this one.
Yeah, it's like an immediate hit.
And it's not it's distinct from her usual bluntness. You can tell there is very much an intent, a different intent behind it.
And Tachibana Hina really brought that out. Like, it was a clear, I don't want you to. I don't want you to go anywhere. Like,
it's like
the eternal world. The eternal world buildup even adds a whole different layer to the end of that scene in the park where they finally accept each other's feelings, because Akane even asks him that he's not going anywhere, that he'll be able to stay with her. And he wants to say yes, he wants to reassure her, but he can't because within his thoughts he knows. This is one thing I need to say about Kohei. It usually seems like he doesn't know that the eternal world is coming to him until the Misao sequence happens in each route, but after looking through all the routes again, he realizes it well before that. If not immediately, then shortly after his first feelings that something out there is just waiting for him. In every route except Mayu's, which I attribute to just how rushed the Eternal World plot there is, and Nanase's, which is an interesting little detail I might touch on a bit later. There is a point well before the Misao backstory where he mentions that he doesn't have much time left, or just thinking that there is an eternity waiting for him still. In Mio's route, it's after he remembers the promise he made with her as a kid and realizing that he needs to look out for her from now on. In Mizuka's route, it's after the very bad thing where he's just in a mess in his own head and he's desperately hoping that she'll be able to forgive him because he wants to be with her in the time he has left. And in Misaki and Akane's routes here, as I said, just as he's reflecting on how happy he should be and how much he wants it to continue, like an invasive thought, the words of the promise, there is an eternity, come to him. But he does not acknowledge it outside of those circumstances because he hates change. He hates having to acknowledge it. He is content to march into that fate if he doesn't start growing as a person like he does in each of these routes.
Yeah, that's like, as we've said before, it's like the whole eternal world is like just like an allegory for suicide, and we see Kohei like throughout the common route, he does things just randomly, and we know now with context that because he doesn't feel like any of his like actions have any consequences or matter, he's just empty inside. He's just going like doing things for the sake of like his own entertainment, because this guy's just he feels detached from the world. And it's only when he forms those connections that he realizes that the world means more to him than he thought. And it's like, and especially with Akane, that hits so much harder because you know that that the eternal world is coming for Kohei, and at this point it's too late. But Akane very much doesn't want Kohei to go away. And the build-up is like just it is dread. The feeling you get from after like the wholesomeness is just dread.
We've been dancing around it. I think we really need to get into it now with what actually happened to Akane's childhood friend, because it is going to relate very deeply to what goes on in this entire endgame.
Oh yeah, so it first begins with Shiko forgetting who Kohei is for a second. And it's like you get it, but like there's still more hints. Like Akane focuses on the rain again. A very like big hint at that she knows more than you let on. And then you guys go on the date, and then Kohei does his typical thing. He goes on a date with Akane, and they part for a little while, and it's like they wait for a long time, and Kohei begins to wonder, did Akane forget him? And he does the typical thing where he tests her, and she initially says that she doesn't know him. So he just reacts as he typically would for the other heroes, just, oh, I'm sorry, you had someone else. And then that's when Akane knows. And it's something clicks. It's just like she reveals that she knew what Kohei was gonna say. And she knew how Kohei was gonna react, but she still asked him, why did you react that way? And now it's Kohei's turn. For the first time, if you played in order in the game, that you're just like, wait. So you knew what was going on. And Akane just leads Kohei back to the field with the rain. And then she tells a story of what exactly happened. And we get the reveal that her childhood friend disappeared in front of her eyes.
Yeah, what I had written before, it's not just a friend who died, it's a friend who went to that place, forgotten by everyone except the most devoted person who had an unbreakable bond that shook her forever.
And that's the crazy thing, is that Akane even mentions that she's like one of the few people who can say that they have exposure to the eternal world without going to it, is that her friend disappeared in front of her eyes, and immediately she started to forget about him, like as if a switch was flipped in her. And so she just started to do her best to remember him, or remember he existed, remember his face. And through a miracle, she did remember him, but that was it. She remembered he existed. She doesn't remember who his name was. He doesn't remember her how he looked like. She doesn't remember anything. She just remembered there was a childhood friend that she once had, and that he disappeared. And she has to live with that burden for the rest of her life.
And remembered how much he meant to her. And like, this is something like a lot of people have said this, like and like it's shown a lot here too. You don't always remember what people in your life did, but you remember the way they made you feel.
Definitely. Yeah.
And one note that I only noticed on this reread is that, based on Shiko's comments that she was coming to check on Akane because she wasn't her cheerful self lately, and how Akane declines going to the Christmas party at first, this was a recent event in Akane's life. Like, I think this had to have happened the same year that one starts. This is a very fresh wound to her.
I don't remember if the details of that are like that, but either
I don't
way,
think it's confirmed. I think what Scout's saying is totally plausible.
Yeah, just based on those two clues, she's doing things that to Shiko are just like, they are not typical, and she had not been showing signs of them before.
Could be. I don't know, because I don't have like any like solid answers, because Akane's personality feels like very set in stone. Even after she goes out with Kohei, her personality doesn't change. It feels like it's something that was built on slowly. So I can't really say for sure either way. But I feel like it could. I won't say it's like very long ago, but I definitely don't think it's like the same year either. I think it's like a maybe like a few years ago across because just people don't change that fast, I feel. But like Akane's current personality feels like it's been through a bit of weathering before the event happened that caused her to eventually close up into her shell and not socialize with anyone. Like
MM is guessing that they were in middle school, and I agree with him here. And the reason is because it's like heavily implied that Akane, her childhood friend, and Shiko were kind of like an important trio, and it is kind of implied that Akane and Shiko's have kind of drifted apart since they now go to different high schools.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I think it probably happened when they were still in school together, but obviously, like, we can only speculate.
But yeah, that's like the major reveal is that Akane is familiar with the eternal world, and that it's already taken someone very precious to her away from her. And then you just get hit with that realization, and it just hits you like a brick that you're gonna make her relive the exact same pain with Kohei. And it's like, you know what's gonna happen. Kohei is gonna come back. He does in every route. But
she doesn't
even then, she doesn't know that, and reading it sucks. Like, it just hurts. And that's like
there are
the mark of a good story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. There are little things that make me think she does really believe in him. On that last day, they're getting or I think it actually might be the second to last day. They're going and getting waffles together again, and Akane wants him to try this like ridiculously sweet waffle, and Kohei's like, "I'll get that one next time," and she says, "You better."
Oh yeah, that's the second to last day.
There's gonna be a next time kind of thing. She wants it. And I think she believes in him. Like, but she's been hurt before, so it's never a guarantee for someone like that, shown by how in that very last CG they are standing back to back. They're not looking at each other in the eyes when she gives him the alarm clock gift.
The amount of grief the amount of pain I felt when Akane like renounces that she doesn't know Kohei anymore, and that he's a stranger to her, is like, I don't blame her, but
it hurts.
It hurts, and it's like Kohei doesn't even like blame her either. It just hurts, and then we find out this dude's been living in the forest. He's just left his house. He's been sleeping in the forest. And then when it rains again, Akane runs into him. And just Tina Tachibana's performance as she just rejects Kohei's existence is heartbreaking.
She's so freaking good.
This is the scene that definitely cemented it for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's so...
You hear the quiver. You hear when she's about to cry, and when the mold is broken here. Like, everything that like she had been hiding is about to break. And like, I think if she had faced him in that moment, she would have broken down. Like, her not looking him in the eye is like her last line of defense.
Yeah, just and then even then they still even then, despite everything she says and how she acts, because we all know Akane says something, but ultimately she does, her actions betray how she really feels. She still brought him his gift because it was his birthday. And the moment she gives it to him and he disappears,
yeah,
1,000 hours of pain and suffering.
By far the most painful disappearance sequence.
It is so heartbreaking. And then you just see her, she says, I can't stop crying this time. It's exactly the same pain, except that this time it's way worse. What have we done? Just, you sweetheart, you didn't deserve to do this twice.
Oh, and that's something the CG show too.
It's so
earlier when she's explaining her story with the friends, definitively, we see the CG of her younger self crying in response to it. And after Kohei disappears, what we're left with is another CG that's just that same one recreated with her in the present time. It's really come full circle for her, and it's heartbreaking to see.
It is so painful. It hits like a truck, and it's like, you know what's gonna happen, but it doesn't get easier to read. And that's the mark of a good story, is that even if you know what's happening, your emotions are the same. That's the mark of like something that's like that hits deep. It hits really, really deep. And it's like,
if not even stronger, because like I can say it now, this on the reread, this was the only route in this game that brought me to tears. And like even more so than the original, because of one, knowing the context. It's one of those routes that just like every little interaction gains more like gives you more context to why Akane is the way she is. And also the voice performance is just like when you see the slow like removal of the cold, and then you get the sadness, and then like in this ending where you really get her, just her delivery is the most raw.
It's so painful, and I was screaming in my room. I was like, ah, and that's like the sign when something hits me deep, and Akane Root hit me deep.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like every Root in one, we do get a happy ending, and I do like that we get to see Akane's perspective a bit longer. It's like she at first repeats what she initially did. She hopes for Kohei to come back because she calls herself an idiot, but then the construction people start building a house there, so they even take that away from her, so she just has nothing left at this point. So she's just wallowing in her grief and just trying her best to continue living life. And then Shiko remembers Kohei, and it's like the realization you get is like she just gets that realization, like, wait, did you just remember him? And then as Shiko continues to speak, Akane just starts tearing up, and it's like she realizes that Kohei kept his promise and that he's back. And then you get like the best CG in the entire game, which looks great, is directed great, and just gives me a torrent of emotions every time I see it. Just like that silhouette of Kohei in the background, Shiko pointing at him, and Akane looking back like the other way, but knowing that he's there with like one of the cutest smiles ever. And it's like,
I love this one. I love this one specifically because she's not facing him, because like she doesn't need to face him to know what's really happening. You see the tears, you see the smile. Like
it's the trust that was truly paid back.
Right.
To her this
it's
time.
all about her learning to love and trust again.
And this time,
the whole detail of seeing him in the CG is something the remake added, which I was so happy when I saw it. This is like one in the top 5 for most improved CGs to me, just for
absolutely.
I'm for me, it's like one of my favorite CGs ever made. It might be my favorite in like key-ish, but I don't really count it because it's not really key, but it's definitely up there. Everything about it is perfect. The framing, the colors, the expressions, it is literally just the best. It is the best. It is like one of my favorite CGs of all time. And then you get her date outfit, and she's in this cute white costume, and she's got this bright smile on her that you've never seen on her. She's just happy. She's finally opened up again. It's just like, this is what I live for. This is exactly what I read visual novels for. This is why I read Gakuen. This is it. This is the best thing ever.
My favorite detail.
This is why you're leading this book club, Manpig.
This is like the moment this route is probably like one of my favorite routes of all time. Like, not even in key. This is just straight up one of my favorite routes of all time.
This is the passion I love to see.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's
like,
wonderful.
nothing has ever hit me quite like Akane route. This is like one of a kind route for me. This is transcendent fiction. This is like a route that has like pushed me to like emotional points that have like rivaled the key true route, which is saying a lot. It's just I love this character so much. I love the path and the result, even though I know what happens. Just every single piece is perfect, and I wouldn't change a single thing outside of the Master CG. But you can go fix that.
We've already established that. And she did get the master for her birthday.
She did get the master for her birthday. Poor Kohei's wallet. I get your pain. Trust me. I have also bought really expensive things. But
I mean, like, if it's a gift for Akane and you get that smile, like the return on investment is really good. So it's okay.
Worth it. I would buy a master for Akane. Oh my god, it was like
same.
It is generally like one of the best payoffs of all time, and I felt so happy. And I was like, this is the best. This is why Akane is one of my favorite heroines in Key. She's in the top 3. She is like, this is one of my favorite Key heroines, not just because like she's well written, but also I just connect to her and I relate to her. And she has a death that is just so intrinsically well tied with all of one, and the amount of she feels so well realized. She has so much more personality even outside the story. Like you don't need to know that she prefers being called by her first name and she likes sweet things and stuff. But it adds to her character. It makes her feel realized. You only get those if you make the choices to pursue her and get to know her better. You have to build the relationship from zero, and it ends up becoming one of the best relationships in the visual novels. Like, so I read this stuff. I love this route. I love this route. It's the best route ever.
So yeah, it's amazing.
My favorite thing about the epilogue is it's a very well during the recap during the early parts of Akane's perspective, where she's just recounting what happens after Kohei disappears. She goes through describing the different seasons as they pass, like several other heroines do. And each time she describes the rain falling. Once again, it's a constant part of her life that is sticking out to her. But after she's reunited with Kohei and we get that final scene of them finally out together, the first thing she says is that the rain is finally stopped.
Rain has finally stopped.
She's got so many good quotable lines in this route. Like, wow.
It is just something else. But yeah, that route. There's not much else I can say. It is just my favorite route.
Do we want to get into final thoughts? We're already like
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Coming up on time. Should I go first or Scout? Do you want to go first?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm just gonna get the rating out of the way. I gave this route a 10. I can accept why some people might not say it's perfect, but on a second read, it did everything I wanted it to and more, and it really solidified for me why 1, in spite of having issues, is a really special game. With this one Akane line during the pivotal scene where she says, "My peaceful, ordinary life made me happy." That's everything I wanted out of this game, and I think that's everything that 1 as a whole is trying to say, and why its atmosphere and its just general vibes, and in spite of the characters not always being perfect, they're not always making good decisions, it's about your peaceful ordinary life, and it doesn't need to be perfect to make you happy. So that's what this game means to me at the end of the day, and this route was the one that really showed me that the most. So that's my final thoughts on Akane route. I think it's absolutely perfect. I I wouldn't change anything either.
That's wonderful to hear. I'm giving it a 10 too. Just it's easily in my top 5, which is a very top 5 key routes right now, which is a very stacked position otherwise. And yeah, along with everything Lucci just said, I cannot think of a route that would be more satisfying to end this whole visual novel on than this. Like,
Yeah.
even if
Thank you
she's
so-
not quite my favorite, this route is absolutely the one where it convinces me the most. Every little step of it is done the best, and it culminates in, I can't even describe it, but it just culminates in the ideal ending to all of this, especially with Kohei's last little monologue. That he's finally walking with the person he loves, and he'll always be able to have her in his heart, and that's why he's able to move forward.
Yep, that change is truly just magical. As for me, my personal thoughts, it is really obvious, but I'm breaking the scale here. I'm giving this a very special number I only give to basically only key true routes and like my favorite stories of all time. This is getting 11 out of 10. This is this is transcendent. It's beyond the top of fiction for me. This is what I live for. This is one of my favorite routes of all time. This is the route that made me want to get into Galgate. I would not be a Two-Heart fan if it wasn't for Akane's route. This is what made me like the genre. I have plenty more Galgates I need to read, and I can't wait to do that. And the only reason I do that is because Akane made me like Galgate. God, I love this route, I love this heroine, and I love everything about one. This is This is not a perfect game, but God, do I love it so much. And this route is like the time that just cements it as a perfect encapsulation of what I look at in a Galgate route. It's just so good. I love this route so much. Yeah. Ultimately, I feel like for closing thoughts on the whole visual novel, it is a very old visual novel. This was a game that came out in the 90s. But even in spite of that, as we've very evidently been talking about through the past few podcasts, there's just so much to love about it in spite of that age that, yeah, there is a lot of things that have not aged well at all. This is not a story that holds up in every aspect, and you can definitely see that, especially in terms of the writing front. But there is still so much appeal to it, and there are definitely gems in the rough. If you're able to be careful and just cut through the rock a bit, you'll find something really beautiful, and you might just get a new favorite heroine. And I feel like that's just like for 98, that ain't bad.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, the one is not like it's not going to be anyone's favorite visual novel. It's just not. It's like, it's got too many problems. It's aged not super great, but you're going to find something wonderful about it. And like you're saying, if you look at just what the messages are, it is a wonderful, wonderful message. And it's like the kind of thing where this was such a risk for Tactics to take. And Tactics, even like, Nexton was iffy on greenlighting this game. And they did it because I think they believed in the vision. And, you know, they chose not to believe in the vision a second time because they wouldn't greenlight canon. But because they did that, and because they had this wonderful game, we were able to get it again 25 years later. You know, this book club may not have ever even happened without one remake. So it's amazing that, like, you have two versions of this wonderful visual novel now to read. And
one is notably easier to get and legally available.
Yeah, it's like, I still find it hilarious that we officially have one before canon or air. That's a weird timeline to be in.
It's a very weird timeline to be in, but I can't say I'm complaining too much.
I'm not either. This was a this is already a wonderful game, but like the real thing here is this was a wonderful remake. And like we knew
so
it was
good.
gonna be, but it was a freaking fantastic remake.
I'm so glad that like yes, you can argue that it could have used a few script changes, but like Hinoe Itaru and the work that they did to preserve the atmosphere and the music, the way this game sounds, the way this game works, the way they preserved all of that. It's just I respect the people working on this so much because it tells to me that they want to honor what they had in the past and they want to honor what they achieved and bring us a callback that brought one to a whole new audience.
Yeah, as someone who was initially disappointed at hearing there weren't going to be script changes, having gone through it all again, and especially joining in on these and seeing some of the angles to the story I hadn't seen before, I'm a lot more okay with it because I think it's important to see and preserve just what this VN was trying to say even back in 1998. Like, for how much, for all the things about it that aged, its heroines and the messages that they are trying to deliver are not one of them. Pretty much every message that their routes contain are something that I think were very daring to say back in 1998 and are just as important today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I am very happy this remake exists. I've said it a lot. I'm so glad I got to reread one and have a story that's been this well made. It's like the amount of care that was put into this. You can really feel it. And the fact that it's just easily accessible and we can just get it now. So one is released to a whole new audience just makes me so happy. It's like It generally just makes me happy. There's no what do you want me to say?
Yeah. Well, I have one more thing that I can kind of like bring as a conclusion to the book club, if you're okay with that, Manpig.
Yeah, go ahead.
Scout, you have something else first?
There was one thing that I was like kind of mentally freaking out on after you brought it up last episode, so I want to at least briefly address this. That question about whether or not Mizuka was the Eternal World girl.
Oh boy, yeah, let's talk about that.
I'm still not sure what you meant by that specifically, and I'm not sure if we want to hash that out first, but from the literal point of view, I took a look at that very closely, and I've got something to say about that.
What do you have to say? What did you find?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I talked about it a bit last episode, but I need to reestablish again Mizuka's backstory with Kohei, the one we're giving at the very start of the game. She's throwing rocks at his room because she wants to play. She hits him in the face by accident when he came to check what was going on. He got angry, he started bullying her, and eventually they became friends through all of that. It's a bit sparse, but you can see where it led. It doesn't need that much expanding on.
Right.
Now, there's the backstory of the promise to eternity that is given during the Misao backstory. And I'm going to be saying some of this nearly word for word from the script. This is during the early time after Kohei moved to this town with his aunt. And he was a complete emotional wreck. He spent basically every day crying his eyes out, being unable to accept what happened to Misao, wanting nothing more than to just stay in his memories with her. And during one of these days, a girl finds him while he's crying and stays by his side from that point on. Every day, she finds him while he's crying, no matter the weather, and stays with him, trying to talk with him. And when he eventually acknowledges her and speaks to her, she says it's just because she wants to play. And when he expresses just the despair that he's going through for the first time, she promises to stay with him forever and seals that promise with a kiss. These two relationships do not match up to me at all. In the Mizuka backstory, he says that he does not recognize her as anything besides someone who might be from his class. And the fact he is even able to acknowledge her that much when she does get his attention tells me this is not the early days that he's describing during the other backstory. I do not think the Eternal World Girl could be Mizuka in the literal sense. I think it was whoever that girl was from the very start. She was the one who made that promise with him, and that promise is very possibly the thing that even let him start letting him recover even a tiny bit from his initial sadness.
I think you have some pretty damning evidence for this. One thing that some people do like to point out as another part of it is that, like, there are different seiyus for Mizuka and the Eternal World Girl in all versions of this game, which is also potentially could mean something, but at the same time, it is important to remember.
I noticed that too, but
the original writers had no say in any voices for any version of this game, which is not true of the writers in Key proper. They do get some say in it, even as early as canon. Like, Maida was asked for input from Interchannel when they were hiring the seiyus for the game, for the Dreamcast port. This was not the case in 1. The writers had no influence at all.
Yeah, I did notice that, especially in the remake, because they sound nothing alike, but I didn't want to use that as evidence because we don't know if that was the intent.
Right.
But
Manpig, do you agree?
I mean, I don't really have any specific answer, as I said before, because, like,
it's all about the interpretation.
It's all about the interpretation, and I don't think we do have a clear answer, because everything about the Eternal World is very vague. Like, we are never given any clear answers, and especially Miss Unknown, as we'll call it, because that's what she's called in EVZ. Is she's just called Unknown. So we don't know the connection between her and Mizuka, like why they look alike. I will say, I'm pretty sure on like one of the advertising materials, they are like in a pose together, but at the same time, that can also just be like a visual metaphor thing. So
that's
a direct answer.
That's not just the advertisement. That's the cover of the PlayStation version.
Okay, so it is like, it is important. So
when I made this connection, I also had to think on why the Eternal World Girl, looks like Mizuka, and I think there's two halves to it. The first half is admittedly the iffier one. I think she didn't always look like that, but I think at some point, Kohei subconsciously started imagining her as looking like Mizuka, because
that's what I thought you were that's where I thought you were going with it, basically.
Yeah, it's two parts of it, because Mizuka is his anchor, and the Eternal World Girl is his guide through the Eternal World. If there's anyone any version of Kohei would want with him during that whole time, it would be Mizuka, I think. And for the second part of why she's a child specifically, he kind of spells it out during the early parts and the end parts of the Misao sequence. He compares the Eternal World to candy or some free toy inside a caramel bar. It's something that would bring comfort and have a lot more importance to a child, but loses a lot of that meaning as you get older. And that's exactly what he's saying when he's rejecting the Eternal World. He doesn't need it anymore at that point, but it doesn't understand that it hasn't changed. And that's why she's a child. She never grew up. She hasn't understood his desires.
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that this is probably maybe right, because like Manpig said, we don't have the answers, but I do like it a lot.
We never will have the answers, yeah. And
Yeah.
everything will just be left to interpretation. But that's also like one of the appeals of one is that it stays in your mind because you're thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't even question this whole scenario until Lucci mentioned it, and I was like, wait, this doesn't
Now we
match
gotta
up.
Yeah. No, it's worth talking about, absolutely, I think.
Yeah.
All right. My last thing that I wanted to talk about is related to the remake. We've already shouted out Fauna for the amazing OP and ED that were added, but like I want to like bring attention to some of the lyrics of this ED to the point where it feels like it was made by people who are truly fans of this game. And just it shows how important one is to its fans. So like these lyrics feel like they were straight out of 1998. Like it's almost hard to believe that this was not part of the original game. So I'm just gonna read like a short clip I clipped out of it of last pages here. I'm at a loss after losing you, somehow losing my map along the way. I chose to tread this thorny path thinking I had saved someone. Yet all I ever really wanted was to reach out to you. But we're now so far away. You're the only one who is never afraid. A brilliant light will break through our loneliness. We are one, but not alone. Now that our paths are bound together, it's time to open the last page.
Oh, so good.
Sweet.
This
Yeah,
game
like-
means a lot to its fans.
I
And
already
I
liked
love
that
it for
song a
that.
lot, but now I like it even more knowing that.
Yeah.
It is just such a good, it's like encapsulation of everything that works about one. Like the people who made this game, they understand the appeal. They so clearly understand the appeal and why people love it. But it's so, I just love everything that was made for this remake. Like the music, the visuals, the amount of love put into it is so clearly like on display, and it's so good. It's perfect. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
an
all right.
absolute classic, and I'm glad we can acknowledge it as such.
Oh god, actually. I'm so glad people got to read this with the remake, because the accessibility and the fact people were interested in it, that's all I could ask for. Like, I'm glad that this classic game has a place in like modern spotlight again. It's absolutely deserved. Yeah. All right, I think that's
I'm totally
it.
with you. I think that's a book club. Manpig, thank you for taking over as the main host for this one.
It is my absolute pleasure. I'm so happy I got to talk about one with everyone again.
Yeah, me too. And thank you, Scout, for coming on for the last two episodes of it. Like for your Key Radio Live debut, it's like you really knocked it out of the park for your debut.
Thank you. Thank you
You
so
did
much for
amazing
having
work.
me.
No,
Yeah.
we're happy to have you. You added so much. Like we're
So
so glad we have another extra like voice to hear and it's like the more opinions we have, the better.
Absolutely.
Especially like a lot of your takes just have a lot of like they have depth, and they're just so much to discuss about with this game, and I had absolute pleasure doing that with you.
It's why these episodes ended up being really long. And like even like if we did a route a week like we did for typical book clubs, I still think these would have been some decently long episodes in spite of the routes themselves being pretty short. There's just a lot to talk about in this game. It's what makes it so fascinating 25 years later.
Absolutely. For such a little game, there is so much packed with it, and I'm glad we could all offer like at least some defense for even some of the less liked routes.
Yeah.
Because I think they all have their own merits, and I think it's valid to like any one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone has their own opinions, everyone has their own viewpoints. You don't have to agree with it, but you can always respect someone else's.
Always.
Yeah. All right. That's a book club. I must finally change my name back to Manpig, and I must take off the one hype train crown for the last time.
Yes.
Until we get a fan disc. Hopefully we get a fan disc for
Oh my
Hokopian.
gosh.
Ever since you said that, it's been at the back of my mind like, what if? What if?
Well, if this happens, like that will be another book club that will happen because it is still one.
I will be so ready, but either way, my final thoughts on all of this. Thank you so much to Novamicus. Thank you so much to Nexton, everyone who worked on this project.
Yeah.
You all did an amazing job. And more importantly, I cannot wait to see what you do next. I am ready for the next game. Show me what you got. I'm ready for it.
Yep. And on that note, we'll end the episode here. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Have an excellent sleepy.
Good night, everyone.